Hello everybody, my name is Boldizsar, it's short Boldi because otherwise it is just too complicated because I am from the Laboratory of Cryptography and System Security from the Department of Network Systems and Services or something from the Budapest University of Technology and Economics from the Faculty of Electrical Engineering and so on and so forth. So from Boldi, from the Crisis Lab, I am assistant professor at the university. And in the same time, I'm the CEO of Untitled Technology, a small startup or spin-off company. Partially the reason is because at the university the paperwork is just so complicated that if we really want to make some private business, that it is much easier to do under company umbrella. But the laboratory and the company helps each other. At the company we have the most talented users, students for working on different problems, and hence we use the term driven by challenges because we don't have those guys who can work on the same topic every time. Sometimes we help out the university guys with some work, or they help us in some special work if it is needed. The topic I will talk today is IoT devices, malware on IoT devices, and detection of malware on IoT devices. And in addition, it is a very special detection because it is based on similarities. You can find possibly unknown malware samples on those devices that are in the same family as the old ones, but freshly compiled or similar. So I sit down here to be more easy. We have a lot of times, 45 minutes is not a usual conference time slot, so I don't have to rush. Internet of Things, the devices, the number of devices rose sharply. It is very interesting to see how sharp it is. So, I never expected that we will have like 50 billion IoT devices today. Of course, they always said that we will have all kinds of different devices that are connected, but it was like a dream. Of course, like 40 years ago, I never expected that web page addresses will be on cars and trucks, and not telephone numbers and fax numbers. So, but it happens. So, yeah. We are in the era of IoT, and of course IoT means a lot of different things. Smart city devices, smart home devices, intelligent transportation, connected car. For the connected car, I have to remark or notice that connected car hacking is not just a problem for the device or for the network, but for the user safety. I mean, this can be a cyber-physical attack to kill somebody. Wearables, digital healthcare, smart retail, Industry 4.0, precision agriculture. Yeah, we are not yet in the era when all the drones go out and put down these stinky bugs and stuff like that, but it is very close to have that, or possibly by laser, tag them or something. Supply chain automation. I can tell you, I also have some IoT devices at home. I was a bit late because I was talking with Vlatko so long for different stuff. Like I have Raspberry that coordinates the watering of the garden by Chrome tab scripts. Of course, it is not the most problematic one, but I have blinds that go down and up by KNX network. KNX network is a separated network on a bus, very slow speed. But because of the isolation, it cannot be hacked, okay, but I have a KNX to IP gateway that I use for actually manipulating the blinds by Chrome tabs. And actually there is no authentication on the gateway, so anybody getting into that network can operate all the blinds. And basically that is also, can be also in very rare cases a cyber-physical damage because, you know, the window of the terrace is open and then some baby goes out and immediately somebody checks my cameras because they can be also hacked, and at the right position he closes the blinds. That would be a nasty attack, but not very likely. For that, I have IP cameras from a brand that has like 50 other brand names, and the IP cameras themselves need a web-based authentication to operate and get the video feed, but they are compatible with the ONVIF standard, and they have a web-based interface to get a snapshot image. So if you ask what is the snapshot in the URL and then you download that URL, you will get a snapshot of the current picture without any authentication from the camera itself. I have a camera server that has a hard-coded username and password that can be used by Telnet protocol to get onto the camera server. How to get this password? You get the firmware image that is installed on the device and grep for root in the format of the shadow file, and then you will get the encrypted password in no time. So that is also hackable. But some more interesting IoT devices. I have a fridge that has a Wi-Fi interface. I don't know for what. It has an application for Android, but the only goal for the operation is that you can get what temperature is set on the fridge, so nothing else. But if you install the Wi-Fi stuff on the device, when you close the door of the fridge, every time when you close it, it makes an SSL connection towards LG and Korea, or the AVS in fact. But the certificate links to LG. But there was not just certificate pending, nothing. So basically, if you make a man-in-the-middle attack for the SSL protocol, then you will get the information that the fridge is actually sending out to Korea every time you close the fridge. It's actually contains the temperature of the fridge and the freezer part, but they have a problem. Please fix it, because for the freezer they send the temperature of the fridge instead of the freezer, so that's not correct in this firmware version. So please fix it. I don't know why it is so good to make such devices. I have air handling devices that circulate the air in the building. I mean, they put the used air out and the good air inside, and they heat, they exchange the heat in the system. Anyhow, the more interesting thing, it can be operated from a web page. Again, with a name and password, but it has also a Modbus over TCP protocol support, and from that protocol there is no authentication, and you can send out Modbus register readings and writings, so you can even write a new password into the device if you want, by no authentication at all.
Into the fridge?
Not the fridge, this is the air circulator. But how we can, really with a problem or not, it's a question of the technology. We saw that in some cases we have problematic IoT devices. The news are full with high notes that what can be hacked and nobody is in safety. When I tell my mom all this stuff, she's always, oh, what a world we are living in, and how it can happen, and what will happening. And I have to convince her that, yeah, the situation is not good, but we are here for handling that, and as long as, for example, we isolate those systems from other systems, we are somewhat safe. But it's a complicated stuff, so at home I have to make a network for my kids for teaching. I mean the work from home lately. A network for the kids for playing. A separate network for the security devices, a separate network for the IoT devices I don't care, a separate network for my work, a separate network for watching TV and doing similar stuff. So that's not feasible to make it and maintain it. So especially it comes to the time when my wife is home alone and she has to fix the network because there is a huge problem. She wants to change the contact scripts, although I try to convince her to learn at least some of these technologies to be able to handle the situation if something goes wrong. Sorry.
When you say separate networks, what kind of VLANs, separate physical networks?
I guess VLANs would be enough with some routers or something that connects them in some fashion, or VPNs, I don't know. But if I tell somebody that the VLAN is used for security goals, then he will tell, oh, VLAN is not secure enough. Yeah, we have to manage it somehow, and it can be secure enough in that level that we want to achieve. But not easy, very good question. I don't know how to actually do that. Of course, it is easy to have decent access points when you have a guest network at least. But you cannot have set like tens of SSIDs in those devices either, or not yet. Maybe that is the future, maybe not. That is not the future. You can decide it, but for the IoT, the problem is that they are so dumb that they cannot support every very strange and novel enhancements of the network, and hence you have to go with it and do something. So IoT malware, IoT malware-based attacks are not so new. What is interesting that it breaks through the limitations or to the public, basically, I guess, at the Mirai. So Mirai was the case when the public understood that this is something interesting. We know that Mirai infected many IoT devices and they used it for DOS type of attacks, and that is hurting people when their services cannot be reached, and everybody understands when CNN cannot be opened that there is something happening on the internet. Of course, the other problem is that the DOS is the most nasty problem in that sense that you can protect your files by cryptography and a lot of different stuff that is nearly impossible to break. But you cannot make a network totally protected against DOS type of situations. Of course, I know that there are a lot of enhancements in the last 20 years with all these content delivery networks and services to protect against DOS. And I also remember that 20 years ago, at 9/11, the problem was that even CNN could not be reached, and we were exchanging pictures about the World Trade Center incident by really different means. I don't even remember FTP servers and similar to solve the issue. And we are not at that level now, back in these times. So, why is it so interesting to protect IoT? Because it is an attractive target for attackers for making new and novel attacks. Why? Because most of these IoT devices are reprogrammable or reconfigurable, but reprogrammable could mean that I can really upload the software to it. If not upload on the disk or the permanent storage, but can run software from the memory, that is still a problem. But in most cases, you can also save some data programs on the persistent memory on those. Of course, sometimes the network capacity, the computing capacity or similar is a bit low for these IoT devices, but in the contrary, there are so many billions of these devices connected to the internet together. Even if one device resources constraint is low, together you can really have a huge network with a lot of resources. These devices are generally almost always connected. We reach to the era when we don't use modems anymore to make connections for a short period of time. Even at homes, these are variable targets. A lot of things can be done by those devices as they are connected to the internet. These IoT devices are not so esoteric. That is a contradiction, of course, because it's somewhat more esoteric than other normal PCs or, I don't know, Raspberry Pis or servers. But in many of these devices, Linux is running, and that is not so esoteric. You can esoteric is how you can, for example, debug my hardware, or esoteric how to compile, cross-compile software for those devices, but otherwise these are just Linux boxes in many cases. I have an oven from AEG, and when I installed it, it asked to accept the license permissions of means of the GPL. So I don't know what is running on that, but maybe Linux is running on my oven, and hence it is so slow when I push the buttons, or because they did not make it real-time operating system or something like that. Okay, these devices are not designed and manufactured in security in mind. Not operated with security in mind, because they are many times operated by normal home users and not by professionals. Easy to find similar devices by Shodan or any other tool. If you know ZMap, you can now scan the whole IPv4 network within some days for some stuff. We had a nasty DOS attack in Hungary, and then we found that in that case also they used the connectionless LDAP protocol, which is based on UDP. I made a ZMap search in one day to find out that there are something like 350,000 devices that are using and answering these UDP requests throughout the internet. Why is it interesting? Because then I can make some filtering lists somewhere to filter out these devices. On the other hand, we have like this number of hosts that can be used for capital to make a reflection, an amplified reflection-based DDoS attack against some networks, and that is bad. And very easy to find targets by similar means, as I mentioned also in Shogun. And it is hard to detect that a device is compromised, especially if the attack is dormant. So they are attacking and making a botnet or something, but the botnet is not doing something for a long period of time, and then they start the attack. Having dormant stuff is very nasty, or backdoors in networks, and still I think we have to fear from it, especially if governments want to attack later on by these means. We are prone to those attacks. So, and of course the home user won't detect that one of these cameras is that is directly connected to the internet is actually part of a botnet and sending spam or making a DOS attack if the amount of traffic is low enough and the ISP is not reporting the incident for the home user. Okay. Potential consequences, of course, everybody dies on the world and all kind of stuff, but really the demonstrations that cyber-physical attacks can happen, it was not a demonstration at Natanz, of course, but by car hacking it was more a proof of concept that shown that it is possible, but this possibility is basically not just possibility anymore. Real-world experience with the Mirai.net, as I mentioned, first 1.2 terabit per second size of DOS attack happened against managed DNS servers. Then in Germany, a specific router, brand router was attacked in a large number, and then people understood that something is bad when they are not able to use their network. Some guys from the electricity or power business said that if we have problem, then at least at the evening people recognize that we have the problem. So this is the same with internet because everybody uses basically internet daily, no times. Yeah, the general problems with IoT devices, open ports, hard-coded passwords, as I already mentioned with my examples. It's not so complicated to get passwords off the firmware image, or if you cannot do that, then you can still have ways to get that from memory by the JTAG interface or something like that. If no other ways is possible, and if it is not the same password is used on multiple devices or backdoor user. One note to remember, 46 default passwords could be used to infect more than 200,000 devices, and this is the 46. Of course, this is why if you put a Linux server on the internet, it immediately receives telnet and SSH login requests in the number of tens per minute or something like that, because most of the time they use the 100 most interesting passwords, not just something very strange and millions of different stuff, just the most easy ones. Yeah, exploitation of vulnerabilities, known or unknown, can be one part, because most of the time firmware of these IoT devices are never updated, upgraded, and hence old versions can occur. Specific exploits for the actual model can happen because they can contain code that was used only by the manufacturer of the brand and never designed or created with security in mind, and hence it can contain various problems, of course. Yeah, very easy to change the malware hosting infrastructure. The attacker changed the malware malicious code by polymorphism automatically or by changing the code directly to avoid detections if there is a detection at all. And new attackers can be on the network as well. So, what we have been working on is called Symbiota, which is not a quite sexy name, but it was based on the similarity-based IoT antivirus combination of words, and it's basically based on a research paper I will show in the last slide, the research paper that describes the details you can find publicly. The idea was that very hard to make an antivirus for IoT device because it contains a relatively small amount of memory, strange processor, and so on and so forth. So what we generally do is we check files or malicious files with antivirus under the PC, but mainly the malware an IoT device, but the antivirus does not run on the IoT device itself. Because of these reasons. But our idea can be run on the device itself because it is efficient, very small resource constraint, very small amount of storage needed, and lightweight. The process of the detection is very lightweight. And it was also a proof of concept if it is really working, but we were really shocked how well it performed. So the detection rate was more than 80%, and the false positive rate was actually totally zero, which is strange. So it is not expected to remain so in the long run, but that is very good. We do not put on the slides, but we even tried to compare this proof of concept solution with commercial malware antivirus software detection rates. Of course on PC or something, and from like 70-something products, Symbiota was better in detection than 71 or something. So there were like 4, 5, or 6 different products that had a better detection rate than this very basic detection method, which is not so very basic, of course, but compared to the complex methodology of sequence-based, machine learning-based, or whatever-based detection, it is based on a more simple idea. Yeah. I jump to the last point that existing proposals have limitations because in some cases the vendor would solve the issue by network-based detection or code-based, cloud-based detection. Then the detection is not done on the device because of these limitations. Instead of sent to the cloud, but we don't like these ideas either. So the basic idea was that we were playing with similarity-based solutions for different reasons, and we had the idea that what if we try to find variants of malwares by using these similarity hashes. Especially we use the TLSH hash for checking the similarity of different binary files. The good news is that the TLS hashes are very short, 35 bytes or similar, and they are representative of the actual binary, and we don't have to store the whole files or something like that, or exact cryptographic hash, but we just store TLSH hashes in some sense, and that can be used for the representation of the files themselves. And this is one way how we use it. We have a database of binary malware samples of the size of 450 terabytes or something. And running a search in that cluster takes a really long time. But if we make the TLSH hashes of all these binaries, then we can make various research on the hashes themselves, because it is a much lower amount of binary data, and then we can go back to the original database and find out what is in the real data set, the big data set. Yeah, and because basically we are using similarity hash, we can find those malware samples that were never ever seen on the internet or by the AV vendors or virus portal or whatever. What is TLS? TLS is trend micro locality sensitive hash, a hash that was proposed to find similarities between binaries. We have other similar ideas like SSD, but some of them are not really designed for binary files. TLSH is more well planned for this usage. So the thing is that this is not cryptographic hash. So if you change one bit, it won't change totally. I mean half of the bits of the result. In this case, if A and B are similar, then the TLS the hash, the TLS hash will be also similar to one to the other, the two hashes. And actually, you can make a function that actually measures the size of the difference between the TLSH values. And at the end, you can get a number that shows you that two TLSH hashes, how far they are, and that reflects how the represented files are similar to each other. So, if you make a lot of TLSH hashes and you find out that some of the TLSH hashes are similar, that they are most likely from the same malware family, just different versions. This is the basic idea for finding similar stuff. So how it would work is that in the left-hand side we have the IoT device. Then we have this binary similarity-based detection process that takes the executable files, calculates the TLSH hash of the file, and compares to database of similarity hashes of known malware samples. And this database is basically the signature file of the antivirus. And if it finds something suspicious or detected samples, it can be sent to some intelligence network or making alarms or whatever. And on the right-hand side, we have the antivirus vendor, basically, who has a malware database and makes a malware clustering, and from the clustering, he can, or the vendor can send out the actual detection database for the IoT device. What is that meaning? We have a lot of samples, and somehow we made this picture about a lot of samples. One dot represents one binary file, and some dots are very close to each other. That means that TLSH representation is close to each other. And as you can see, these are small clusters, groups that can be different families of malicious IoT samples. And what we want to do is we try to take some set of nodes that are in the basically somehow in the middle, a dominating set of nodes that with the right value of the TLSH difference limitation, like for example we set it 40 or something, cover the whole area of similar malware. And if you have this whole dominating set, we just have to send out the database of the dominating set, the elements of the dominating set to the antivirus detection engine, and we don't have to send out all the hashes of all the known malware samples. So this is sent to the IoT device for detection. Okay. The idea is very basic, but we have somehow really make it. We made some clustering efforts and stuff like that, how it can be made. but the more interesting, we tested with real malware data. We used malware samples from 2006 until 2020, but we made the evaluation period if we would have been in 2018. And week by week, testing if the database would be the state of the beginning of the week, then what we detect from the samples originating from that week by first submission to virus total. And then next week we evaluated it again with the simulation that an update was sent based on the data of the malware that was detected that week, and next week maybe the solution will detect new malware because at that week something happened and new malware samples were found in the database. And yeah, what happened is we have some interesting slides. Over a period of, we have different slides for mixed processor and ARM processor, but basically what we found is there is no big difference, but we had to check it because there can be fundamental differences between the two. But we found no such big fundamental problems. The rate of detection went up throughout the weeks. For future malware samples that was not yet detected in that week, but was introduced later on the network, we had a lower detection rate because what we see is sometimes it jumps down. That means that a new malware family was introduced or something, and it took time for the algorithm to get information about that. But later on, it went back again to be very high and find out the good stuff. The dominating set update size, what does it mean? The number or the size in bytes, how much data as a signature file should be sent to the device, is actually when it was almost constant, but compared to the whatever, I didn't remember correctly, but it's on the slide, it's a bit small here. So the ratio compared to something went down a bit. As I mentioned, we found no false positives at all. And some very short notice about a short introduction. Making the dominating set totally optimally is an NP hard problem, so we have to do something to make it possible in normal time. And the main question is how to make an update, what to do if a new malware is found. If the new malware is found outside of the set, then we can do an update that we put the new malware sample as a dominating, as a point in the dominating set as an addition. Of course, that won't be the optimal one possibly, because otherwise we have to recalculate the more clustering to be more optimal. So this this makes some research type of questions, and hence it is a joint work of Ukatemi and the Krisinslav, because partially it is a research paper. So how should we update the D? Because if we update by this native mean that shows that the blue line after some time is showing this basic update mechanism. And if we would make a global update, that would produce a relatively shorter, smaller file and solving the same problem, having the same detection basically. And to avoid this, and of course the amount of performance, computing performance needed for the symbiote basic update is much lower than making a whole update each time. Of course, update is created by some server or server part or cloud or whatever, so we have much more resources to make it every time, but still it's an interesting question how to do that. This is showing that the detection is not much different from the two ideas. But we also proposed a new method which is described formally in this slide, but I won't go into the details. That is in between the two. It is not growing so much bigger than the optimal or somewhat optimal detection, the global update process. But in the meantime, the detection is almost the same, and the resource needed to make it is almost the same as the original symbiote algorithm, which is a good thing. So, conclusions. Basically, we created a very effective resource detection algorithm. I don't know, in some slide, I think it was the data that the actual database was something like 10 kilobytes long. The 10 kilobytes was enough to detect all the known or known by us IoT malware in this experiment. This is very interesting because we did not expect so good detections by this simple idea. Of course, it is not perfect, and maybe the attackers can work to avoid or circumvent this type of detection and do tricks to poison the database or whatever. But it was a really interesting work, which was basically supported by the SETIT project, which is a Hungarian-funded national research project, and the goals of the SETIT project was not just to create something, but to provide novel research solutions and other stuff for software security, platform security, and algorithmic foundations and cryptographic building blocks for the future. And it is a joint effort from 3 universities. As I mentioned, we are more with Budapest University of Technology and Economics Crisis Lab, but also Szeged and Debrecen worked on that. And I promised to have the presenting the front page of the paper describing the stuff. Yeah, and basically that's it. I think we have like 5 minutes left, so you can have questions.
Yes, so interesting. How do you locate the samples of the IoT device? Because you need to extract the binary. So how do you locate one of the IoT device? How do you know that you located the right piece of the code?
You can check all the files, but that is an option. You can have also different tricks. If you have trusted execution environment, possibly, then you can combine the stuff with the monitoring of installation of new binaries somehow. If it is not trusted...
So this is not part of your work, how you locate it specifically, how accurately it can be, because you have to locate it into memory.
In the memory, so I think we are discussing more about the binary on a disk, not in the memory. From the memory, there can be ways to get process information and partially get the binary image that is running in the memory, but that is always a problem. But with TLSH, it is not impossible to do that. Because in many cases, if you use volatility or something and you dump some executable process into an executable file, it won't be the original one, most likely. It will be similar, and hence maybe it can work, but I'm not sure. I think we need to test this possibility.
So this work is based on disk-based model, let's say flash-based model, right?
Let's say that.
So I guess the new idea is to have memory.
Yes.
We can continue the effort.
Yeah, I have a question. So the dominating set is measured and calculated somewhere else on the server, and once a week you download it to the IoT device,
Exactly.
and then the IoT device checks whatever file comes to it.
Yeah, it was
against that set.
So we did not actually use the IoT device to check this stuff, but we emulated like it.
Okay, but in theory, the
Yes.
IoT would execute the hash checks
Hash check based by the update or something.
and compare it to the to the dominating set that it has been downloaded like once a week.
Exactly. So you download this information about the dominating set, like a virus database, and you can either run it on the files on the device or by other means, like just at the startup of the executable or something.
And server selects to process and to find the dominating set. Does it process only files that are meant for this kind of a device, for a specific kind of IoT device, or just measures any kind of IoT?
I don't remember because the question is good because we have ARM type of stuff and MIPS-based of stuff. So if we have 2 detection files or just one, if I remember correctly, we had only one, a joint one. But it is not much different. The size is different, but because if we even select like a very specific target, then we can drop out samples from the set. Basically, then we have different maps and we have to make the dominating set based on that information, but most likely it will be smaller for that specific device. And we can go down from 10 kilobytes to 5 kilobytes in the era of gigabytes and terabytes of memory, of course.
But there's no constant connection with some kind of server?
Not needed. This is one of the ideas that it is not a cloud or network-based
so it's just once a week connection
or something like that, and you can really check what is going, because the other problem is that okay, that my fridge is sending out information about closing about the fridge when I close the door, but I'm not afraid of that. I'm afraid of that after a week it sends out all the information about who was talking about by recording the microphone on the fridge itself, because it has the microphone, no, microphone not, anyway, I don't know.
Okay.
No problem without the microphone, so.
So it has something, diagnosis mechanism that if the fridge has a problem, it chirps out sound notes like in the old Spectrum era, and you can put the phone there, and by that means it can report to the center what is wrong. But it is not microphone, it is a buzzer.
How would you deliver that software onto the device? Because like there are so many different devices, do you need to compile the code as it comes to the device, or how would you do that?
No idea.
And the other thing is, at what point do you actually do the step?
No idea. Okay. We focused on this particular part, not on the actual use, and again we don't really want to make a commercial product from it. So of course for cross-compiling maybe it would be nice to have some virtualization something environment that is installed on each device and compiled once, and then the actual antivirus runs on as a virtual code or something like that. But that has also limitations and advantages and disadvantages.
I want to ask, if you are calculating, I mean, you have to calculate caches of malware, so incoming files on the disk. Why not just then calculate cache of the system and compare it to like a cache of the true image, like real image, not malware infected?
That is one way to that. You mean that reputation-based stuff that you can only install files that are good.
Exactly.
Good reputation. Not
if you are having like all that detection in the first place.
Things change. Whatever you have on the disk changes from day to day. So if you just detect is different from yesterday, it's probably going to be different. And this is the way actually to kind of to try to see if there's some malicious code.
Sometimes you also use this type of methodology. There is a tool called Norton Public Eraser, and it can be used to detect totally malware that is totally not known. It scans all the files and sends out in some cloud database the hashes, and it will find out every file that is not commonly used. But this way you send out information about what is installed onto your system, so maybe it is not a good idea. It depends on the case, what is the situation. Okay, thank you for the questions and thank you for